I am Tavish Carduff, and I am here with my stepson, Corporal Ben Smith, who is home on leave for a little bit before he heads to Italy, and he has graciously agreed, I do not know why, to have this conversation with me about emotion, but I am very grateful. Welcome, Ben. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The question we have for this week is, how often does the way that you feel alter your plans, like your daily plans? We're just asking ourselves inside how often that happens. In the Army, how you feel doesn't get to affect your plans, does it?
No.
Do they care a lot about feelings?
No, not really. You might encounter some people who try to facilitate you the best way that they can, that they're able to, that like is the capabilities given to them as leaders. But ultimately, the culture is that things have to be done, or you need to be somewhere, or regardless of what might be going on, that there's something more important, that there's other stuff at stake rather than the person.
Take a breath for that for a minute. It's a lot of people whose emotional needs aren't necessarily being addressed, right?
Yeah.
But they've got a job to do. And I think that's a lot of times what we feel with emotions is that they take a secondary role because the things in front of us are so important and those don't have value. With our raw material, we're trying to really look at the structure of feelings and how to not avoid them, but actually use them to help us. I am curious about your insight because you moved away from friends and family and did something that took you so far out of your element. You know, you're an emotionally present person. So how was that for you?
Yeah, I mean, I hesitate to say the word mask on, mask off. But, you know, there's a certain time where you need to, I think some people shift it with professionalism with work. Some people are like, well, I need to be a professional. I need to appear professional. I need to come off professional. And I wouldn't go so far as to put that label on myself, because I wouldn't say that the feelings and the appearance of myself or my peers is professional. But you know, we have a professional-esque sort of thing that we need to do. And professional often really doesn't attach emotion to anything. Professional is pretty just bland. Or if it is an emotion, it's just sort of a happiness or just sort of gladness to just be there.
So being in that space that's away, how have you handled when, you know, feelings have come up, like you miss people or just little things like that, before you got to know friends and things? Like, how did you deal with those kinds of feelings?
I mean, I don't think this is on topic, but it is sort of on topic. Within my little corner of the military, there's not a lot of women. There's not a lot of women. You don't talk to a lot of women. You don't see a lot of women. There have been times where from going from a household where there was at least three, and then seeing my mother, and you know, and having very often, you know, close relationships with my grandmother, and a lot of women in my life who were really important, lots of friends who were women, and then going from a place where I had so many feminine perspectives and then not having any whatsoever. Yeah, so many feminine perspectives in my life, so much feminine input. I've got to see firsthand how that has helped me as a person grow and very hinder me as a man, incredibly so. That I've seen a lot of people who didn't have that, and they have been hurt in a lot of ways, and then removing that from my life, I definitely felt a huge absence, like a huge absence that I couldn't really put my finger on. Like and those were things that like I knew that was happening, but I wasn't really able to kind of take a pulse on until I started interacting with a woman again, and then I was like, oh, that's what it was. And that a lot of that has to do with emotion and how people deal with emotion and how men deal with emotion and process emotion. You know, I feel like a lot of women are like, at least in my generation, are like, we act as therapists for men without any of the pay.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and I think I think there's a dynamic there that I had never really considered before, but like, there's the stereotypical like movie like, oh, I just want you to open up to me or whatever, like in film and whatnot, and then I think some men they don't feel like they can be open with their emotion in a lot of like outlets, but when they find a woman that they're like close with, like emotionally intimate with, and they're able to expose themselves, and then now there's this weight of their emotions that they're finally giving someone else, and then the women are like, wow, this is heavy. I have to deal with this too on top of my own, on top of their own sort of thing. So
yeah, I think for anyone, when you unpack all of it at once, like, oh, look, I can do this, and then you pull it all out, it is a lot.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, at least moving away for me, that's a huge thing that I have had, because I mean, I'm saying months without even talking to a woman who wasn't just like serving me my food, or like at the dining facility, or maybe at the gas station clerk. Like, never even.
You've always been such a thinker that I would imagine emotions became a little bit objective for you in a way that they hadn't been before. Because you had to figure out what to do with them.
Yeah. Again, in different aspects in life, and like civilized people, you deal with emotions in different ways. And my line of work is a little different. That if there's any sort of anger that you're holding, like there's any sort of beef, quote unquote, that you hold with another one of your peers, that's a thing you settle. If at least in my experience, other people don't. Other people have had these experiences where everyone just kind of keeps it on underneath. No, you pretty much settle it, and everyone knows where you stand. And it's either like settled in a way where you're good, or you're settled in a way where you're not good, but that's just how it is. But it's
what happens then when it comes down to having to work together?
That person who you're gonna, and there's a lot of discussion that happens here in my field about this. At the end of the day, whether or not you trust the guy to your left or your right to pull you out or grab you and pick up your body, you need to operate from the perspective that you're going to do for them. And you kind of just have to believe that about yourself. Mm-hmm. And by having that faith in yourself, you just have to have the hope that sort of energy transfers onto them, and that they have that faith about you. Because the angriest I've ever been in the Army is when a person who I thought was a friend of mine, or we were becoming friends, told me that he doesn't think that I would get him if he was hurt and wounded.
I can see that.
Yeah, and I was incredibly hurt. That was the most.
Yeah.
I was like, how dare you? I was really, really angry. This is probably now, the same guy is probably now the closest friend that I've had in the military. But he said that to me, and I was taken aback, but I didn't stew on it. I didn't internalize it. I immediately responded, and we had a sort of words, and it was resolved by a mediator. But yeah,
even as a kid, you were uniquely like emotional and thinker. I don't know what your INFT, whatever that is, but I would bet you could take the test several times and wind up with different.
Absolutely, and I have.
Because I can see you, just depending on your mood, going either way. But when you talk about men in the Army and things like needing a breaking point to reach a place of vulnerability to just build friendship, like you have to break something down to build it. So with men in particular, I know your environment wasn't quite like that, but you can see where several men didn't grow up with any outlet for emotion, any opportunity to feel vulnerable. And maybe those kinds of spaces are the first time they've ever experienced that.
Yeah, there's something really unique where, and we talked about it once at work, and we pulled up this study, which I don't know if it's true or not, but it said that the chemical that bonds women with people often is released when women feel in this neuroscience study the same emotion as being protected or being safe. Like being protected or safe or feeling like comfort, though that is the feeling that releases this chemical that bonds them with other people in their brain. And men, when they bond with other people in their brain, it's the same. That chemical that bonds them is released when they're most often feeling the feelings of stress and hardship, and like they just feel like overwhelmed.
If you've been able to be vulnerable in front of someone.
Yeah, and I thought that was really interesting, because when we get new people who haven't done things with us or been places with us or carried their weight with us, they get treated a certain way. I was definitely treated a certain way long after I had been carrying my weight and being with people. Like I was 6 months,
Probably because you're so open.
Yeah, for a time. I'm able to mask on, mask off, I think, pretty well with my peers.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, definitely.
You're good.
Definitely. And
if you ever need a career on stage, I'm sure you'll find it.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe. But what really bonds in my environment is suffering. It's mutual suffering, because and you're, at the same time you're like, oh, this sucks, I hate it. We don't have clean water. We haven't had water in a day and a half. We don't have food. It's hot. We don't. These rucksacks weigh a lot. So on and so forth.
Conditions that most people don't encounter,
right?
Unless they take on something like that.
And you're hating it. But then that experience pays 6 more experiences of you with those friends. Be like, do you remember that time? And then you're having a beer, and then be like, hey, after this, we're gonna go walk to the bowling alley and get trashed, or we're gonna go and watch the motor speedway when we get back. I mean, it just ends up like you bond over it, yeah, which is cool.
So, just to turn that around a little bit, if younger men, when they're in childhood, had a little more opportunity to be vulnerable, had opportunity to not have to fit a certain role, and could put themselves in situations that they, do have to rely on each other to bond, building things together. Just, there's all sorts of learning environments that could be created. And with Madigan, sister, going into education, we've been talking a lot about alternative ways to educate and alternative ways to teach kids the things that they need to survive in the world that we live in now, not the one that our education imagined several years ago. And I think the Army really teaches a lot about structure, and I see them trying to fit emotion in at this point, trying to take care of mental health. Yeah,
they do.
Trying. Nobody's got this handled.
No.
Look around you.
They don't.
We're looking at a lot of people medicated to do something different with their emotions than what bubbles up in their body.
Yeah, and a lot of the people that I've known in the military, they do that with alcohol, because we do get drug tests, and a lot of I've known people who pop top for drugs too, but like a lot of people will self-medicate, not even after work. I know 2 guys who for months, every lunchtime, they would go down to the gas station on our base, and they would get a 24 rack of Twisted Teas, and the 2 of them would finish it at lunchtime.
Unfortunately, that is not limited to the Army.
No, it's not.
That happens a lot. Addiction itself, there's really no other reason that people become addicts.
Yeah.
Other than a failure to express emotion.
Yeah.
I mean, it all comes back to that.
It's funny, I remember something earlier when we were talking about my exposure as like a young person and later a young man to women, and how that affected my ability to be emotion. I've had a lot of people, not enough, let me tell you that, but I've had a lot of people come to me to share things with me because they trust me. A lot of people who I didn't even consider really that close to me and have come to me and share. I had a person who, now you can be gay in the Army, but being gay in my little corner of the Army infantry, it's not a bad thing. People aren't going to treat you the same. It's not like they're going to make fun of you. They're gonna dance around you. They won't treat you the same way. They won't treat you like you're one of the guys. They won't be the same to you. I don't know any openly out infantrymen.
Sad.
But I have had someone who was closeted come out to me. And I've never had like a serious person come out to me. I mean, I've seen like people come out in high school, but it's all very cushioned and everyone's there for you, and there's all sorts of support in place. At least in my experience growing up in the where I grew up and went to school. The biggest club at our high school was the Gay Straight Alliance. Like it was very backed up, but
supportive environment
yes,
that way.
Absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, I had never thought that was ever going to happen to me in my life, where someone was going to come out to me and it was going to be something like that they were ashamed of. And he wasn't quite ashamed, but he was like, "This is who I am," and he obviously didn't want me to out him.
But you were able to feel not only the gravity of what he was bringing, but like for someone to bring that to you, the feeling that it creates in you.
Right, and that vulnerability that we were talking about. I've had way more male attention in my life than I've ever had female attention. I guess it's kind of close now. It's gotten closer as I was older, but as I was younger, I had a lot of boys who were into me, or at least thought that I'd be into them. And I've had people come up to me that way. But that wasn't this.
This was different.
Yeah, this was different.
This was your trusted person, not an invitation.
Right, exactly.
We were talking about how emotionally present you are, and you truly are as far as human beings go. But as a kid, and really into your teenage years, you were very protective of your emotions. You really thought they needed to be like kept in a thing that nobody can see them. And I see that all kind of coming out. I see you working with all that stuff. But even when you were like that, you were still a lot more emotional than a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can be, I definitely feel anger and jealousy and resentment, disgust, and other things. You know, I don't know what it is about being in the space I've kind of gone back and forth. For my first time driving since when I got my newest vehicle in 2020, my most emotional place was in my driver's seat. I was so emotional. And I think it was because I was protective of my vehicle, is what I really felt like, is because I had put money into this. And wow.
There's value.
Oh, yeah. And if there's anything that I'm the most emotional about, it is definitely my vehicle, which seems silly, logically. But I've never felt such highs as when I've driven my truck. And I've never felt such lows as when my truck has been messed up. Because it's different than a person, because a vehicle does this thing where it enables your freedom in this nation, especially, to go and do things and live your life. It's like I felt like I couldn't be me without it. And when I felt like I had it, I finally was me, because it was the vehicle that I wanted since I was 11 years old. It was a dream come true. It was really, I used to write, I mean, this is going to sound so silly, but I used to write love letters to my truck. I was like, love letter to my Bronco. And I put it in the thing. And it was this idea that my truck might give out on me and I might die, because there was this really bad part that was rusted out for some time. And that they would find it and they'd know. But yeah, that's probably been the most emotion for me, honestly, in the last 4 years.
Our emotions fuel our imagination. And you have always been an imaginative kid. Even when you were, hiding your emotions, you were like churning them. They were working. They never got to just stop. They came out in some way. Illness, movement. You have a lot of ways that you just move around because it's very hard to sit still with how much feeling runs through you. Because of that, I think it's really cool that you just keep yourself in kind of perpetual motion. I've always kind of joked with your dad that you're always like furiously reinventing the wheel while bicycles are all around you. And to some extent, that is true because you really like to do everything yourself.
Yeah, I do. And that has made things really hard. But, and honestly, I'd like to say that it's all been by myself, but you can't. There's no way. There's no way to do it all by yourself. I've tried.
I can see the emotion in wanting that so badly, too.
I really have tried, but it's really hard. It's really, really hard.
Well, I keep pushing this notion, especially with emotion, that, we use our emotions to create our own reality. So things like writing a letter to your future car and then manifesting the car. There are so many things in your life that you've thought and then they've happened. And these are positive things and negative things. So even all the obstacles in front of you have been produced from emotions.
Yeah.
So when you start looking at your emotions objectively, which you've been doing for several years now, but also looking at how to use them in a way that, to dream with them and to create the kind of environment that you want. So how have you, getting through this portion of the Army and getting ready to head now to Italy, which, again, into the unknown, but a pretty exciting unknown.
Yeah. It's, I don't know. I went the way that I did in the Army, hoping that was going to be the first thing that I did. That was going to be my immediate thing that happened to me.
Italy.
I was lucky enough that it didn't, because the people who did do right when I went got 2 years of their time in Europe stolen from them by the pandemic. So even though that was what I had wanted, and that was my ultimate goal, hoping for, I turned out to get a much better deal. I got where I got in North Carolina, and I got my truck, which has brought me endless good memories. And I've made really good friends. I've made a lot of friends that I hold dear to me. I'm not going to call them really good friends, because everybody has their flaws, but I've made very, very close friends. Let's put it that way.
You've also learned how to develop friendships and let them have distance.
Crazy. Because we were talking earlier about wanting to have people in your life and keep them, and then they go away from you. And that's so, I don't know how it is for other people, but it was always so hard for me. It still is to an extent. But everybody that you meet in basic training, I saw maybe 2 of them again after basic training. And then on my friends that I made in airborne school, I don't think I've seen anybody I've met in airborne school since then. And then when I went to Ranger selection, all of those guys, no, I don't see any of those guys either. When I went to my first company in my unit, I had all those friends, and then eventually a group of us and that friends, we went and tried out for this thing, and we went to a different company. That group and I did, but I had to leave behind those ones, and then I've seen other people leave. People are constantly leaving and getting out, or going somewhere and getting out and going somewhere. My whole 4 years is making connections, and then these people being gone. It's like people leaving is the norm at this point, and now I'm the one who's like really leaving.
Yeah.
For the friends that I've had the longest, and I can say that that's hard on them, and it is to me for an extent. But I'm excited about where I'm going to go. I'm nervous, but I am really excited.
More excited than anything.
I'm feeling really nervous right about now. I was really excited the last couple of months, but
it's close.
Yeah,
it's imminent.
I'm feeling more nervous now.
We're getting ready.
Yeah.
Well, the advice I give for Emotion Week, and take it with you to Italy if you want, like all my advice, which I've given him plenty that he's wanted and not wanted, all at the same time. Take feelings to like you're standing at the ocean and let them wash over you like a wave and wash back and feel them and, let it all flow. And as soon as it washes away, then you're back to your value system. You're back to what's important. And especially when it comes to keeping yourself from doing things because of how you feel, sticking it out with the thing, even with a negative feeling, there's a sense of accomplishment in there. There's a sense of movement. So when we let feelings derail us, we let them get stuck. When we stay moving with them, we might wind up in Italy.
Yeah.
Right?
No, it's cool.
Well, thank you so much for being here for this conversation. I really appreciate your vulnerability and your insight, and good luck in Italy.
Thank you.
Quan and Cherry will be back next week for listening. Thank you so much.